Yes. Once again, it's on.
Yes, indeed.
Happy super satiating Sunday. Freestyle session. Magnificent build on the way.
Indeed. Peace and perfect resonance, everyone. Peace and perfect resonance.
Yes. I'm your host, Jay Drews. And my counterpart host, Black Sun Shaman, aka T Manu. Yes, indeed. Thanks for joining us on a super satiating Sunday for some satiating conversation, sensational aspiration and inspiration. It's been a minute, but we back at you live. Been a long time coming.
And so much has went on in between.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. How you been, my brother?
Oh man, all has been well, making positive forward motion, making sure I got my seeds on deck, making sure I got my little tiny home, making sure I got a plan in the case of emergency, making sure my family's straight, the usual stuff. How about you, man?
Sounds like you've been putting on your big boy pants.
Yeah.
As they say.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, man.
Yes, indeed.
Working towards it, man. Just been on the grind lately. Just, trying to keep things moving and, trying to take care of these seeds, the posterity, the
I think
offspring.
that's the common theme in this economy is work hard. Very, very hard. And
Yeah.
get very little, but you gotta do it. You got them babies to
Indeed. Indeed. Mr. Need More will make you do more, as my dad says. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So what we got up, man? What's happening? A lot to talk about. Where to begin is, you know, dealer's choice.
feed. Well, I mean, anywhere where you like to start. There's so, like you said, there's so much to build on. One that I thought was cool, like an eye catching, or ear catching one for me. They said in that particular jab situation, um, that the blue light activates specific nanotechnology. So when you talk about Project Blue Beam or Project Blue Ray, that specific program, it's another potential unfoldment in the revelation that that blue light has nanobite activation capabilities. And interestingly enough, they're placing these purple and blue lights all up and down freeways and within inner cities where people have to drive through this blue light and purple light spectrum. Still don't know what exactly it's for, but I'm sure it has some close relation to that.
So you're saying that from what you gather, these purple or blue lights are activating nanobots within certain individuals or groups of people that have been.
Yeah, they say under from what I understand, under blue light they begin to form. The nanoparticles or the nanotech or whatever you want to call it begins to form. The graphite and other things begin to form into different um, shapes or what do you congeal into different things. And so under that blue or purple light activation, there may be some type of formulation for those particles that are in that thing. You know what I mean? In that thing.
In that thing, you referencing the vacation in
Mm-hmm.
Pokey Pokey.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Vaccination. Vaccination.
Vex a nation.
Mm-hmm.
When you put a hex over a nation, or in this instance, multiple nations uh, have been pushed into one under one banner. Gotcha. So the corporate infrastructure is no doubt likely the manipulators of this phenomenon, right?
I mean, very, very potentially, we know through Tuskegee experiments that it's not beyond them. You know what I mean? And then we also know that the patent and the jab was patented within the U.S. patent offices previous to it ever occurring. So those are two big facts. You know what I mean? Big facts. You know what I mean? Like,
Big facts, absolutely. Not emphasized enough, in my opinion. Um, that fact. Um, yeah, so I mean, you follow the money, you always find the culprit. Interesting thing you and I were discussing on one particular, day in recent days is the correlation between the DC and Marvel universe. Mostly DC, when you deal with the series Black Lightning, they refer to
mm,
humans, those with metaphysical abilities or beyond human physical calculated expectations
mm.
that would be more so godlike or goddess-like in some instances, and one from one vantage point, um, things that would supersede technology if used with a great deal of skill um, and understanding.
Did you ever hear about that African brother? I can't think of his name right now, and I don't know why I can't think of it. It was um, talked about on
Simon
Simeon
Simeon
something.
Toko or something to that effect.
Simeon Toko. Yep, that's him.
I'm familiar somewhat. Yeah,
And, and so it's not beyond, with that story in mind, it's not beyond their capability to, not have reverence for these type of beings when they come in lightning. They had these different color levels, interestingly enough, these different color levels that would determine a person's power or capability, you know what I mean, or danger level, these different levels of power. And what we're learning now is the more electrical current, the more energy you have going through your body, the the awareness changes in correspondence to the greater power that may be in your energetic system. So, like Tesla had an idea for a chair, and now we have an electric chair. And with those energies going up in a person like that, and those awareness levels rising like that, who knows what capabilities those people have? And they do a lot to inhibit electrical power and keep it registered and regulated, even though it can be freely transferred in the air with no charge and no negative effect on the atmosphere. They still
most
charge us
definitely.
and regulate it heavily, which doesn't make a lot of sense in the scheme of things unless you're trying to prevent or keep an eye on or regulate power. You know?
Yeah. So in the Black Lightning series, they refer to this particular project to surveil, subdue, and control the metahuman population. They refer to it as Project Greenlight, which I find absolutely interesting because you made reference to Project Bluebeam, Project Blu-ray. Then there's Operation Paperclip. Um, there's also another Project Superman, where individuals were being trained to use mind over matter techniques, such as um, when we were kids, people would try to levitate, light as a feather, stiff as a board, light as a feather, stiff as a board. But they would have the individual would say, "My legs are springs, my legs are springs, my legs are springs." They would run and jump off of a 50 to 100-foot drop off onto asphalt or concrete without breaking a single bone, without spraining a ligament, without spraining a muscle, tearing a muscle, and continue to run at accelerated speeds beyond the
Indeed.
normal calculated human capabilities.
Made me think of the test run for Neo in the Matrix as well.
hmm Very similar and very real. These are documented. Uh, you know, Freedom of Information Act has the records declassified now for public consumption. But these are just some of the things that I've come across, in my past research and interest in the subject and the possibilities of what could be real and what's conflated, based on fantasy or imagination. But when you're dealing with the mind, I mean, what's really beyond the imagination? What's beyond the reach of imagination?
Everything that ever came into existence came through a mind or a heart before it came into a paper or determinable form. It had to enter into a mind and heart first. So really, we don't know what's beyond the imagination. 40 years ago, we have technologies available to us now that are beyond our imagination back then. And then ancient history has technology that's further beyond what we have available to us now. So that even puts us at a greater capability than we can conceive. You know what I mean? At this particular part in our development. But you know what? That's what we can build on the current state of affairs as far as what's going on in the world. Because have you seen this crap show of a
Mm,
of a of a of an election we got going on right now?
absolutely. And this is, well, pre-election, the I guess you could say the candidacy
Yeah,
on
yeah.
both sides of the aisle, the political drama that's unfolding is
Somebody
it's
turned the phone around to me, and I
extremely
thought it was
entertaining.
a joke. I thought it was a joke. I seen Megan Thee Stallion in some like blue suit type thing, crop top type deal, and this is who Kamala Harris decided, or her staff, whichever, decided to have at her conference, a meeting, group, political
It was a
campaigning
rally, yeah.
rally. Yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
her they decided to have her, and there was one other person. It didn't make it no better, but this is the type of
Quavo,
stuff that's going. Quite.
my friend, my good friend Quavo.
what
Shout
what is
shout out shout out to the Migos.
shout out? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Much much love and respect, but at the presidential rally, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't give me healthy examples for the future of men and women, and it doesn't give me healthy example acknowledgement of a president for women in general. You know what I'm saying? I just this could be my own personal opinion, but I will say a president is who very many sorority groups, college groups, girls growing up aspire to that office and that position. So her level of influential capability is extremely high with this presidency, her first woman president.
Indeed. So let's play a little game called I Spy with my spiritual eye. A problem for I would say women of color, except I'm educated. So let me share that education and build on and expound on that. When you talk about people of color, women of color, you're describing someone that would foot the bill, uh, description wise, of a Kamala Harris. Because while men slept, as my mother likes to say, I like to borrow from my parents, as they were my best and most influential teachers throughout life, and still are. Thankful to still have them in the land of the living. Shout out mom and dad. But look, check it out. People of color or women of color, we're referring to someone who is not under the status of white or black. That's a whole different status. And when we deal with legal terminology, when you deal with color of law, you're dealing with a prejudicial standpoint in which one is either dehumanizing another individual or group under the color of law. So they're denying them their God-given rights, their
Yeah,
full full
Fine.
in good faith and good credit rights uh, by putting them in a subcategory
That has
by
its own regulations
right
and
via a
procedures.
social or political status category, right? So
Mhm.
what a lot of people I think are hung up on with whether she's black, whether she's this, whether she's Indian, it would be a perfect world where we could say that doesn't matter. But what is often being overlooked in the conversation is that it does matter because you will never see a black president. You haven't seen a black president yet. I know some of you are going to see this in the form of a clip, or you might watch this video and say, listen to what this crazy dude is saying. Like, no, go back and check the interviews of Barack Obama while he was holding the office of CEO of the U.S. Corporation. And listen carefully to him explain that he's the first Kenyan American president, denoting a nationality. Even though he was not born in Kenya, his father was of Kenyan descent. His mother being born, I believe, in Kansas, and his grandmother being a direct relative, a cousin of the Bush family. Yes, I'm referring to the ones that served in office and the one that was former head of the Central Intelligence Agency. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So these are
Who
family members, and we're looking at an organized oligarchy or bureaucracy that's now moving towards the tech giants or tech barons. I'm going to use an old term that they used to use back in the day. He's an oil baron. He's a diamond or a gold baron. He, owns mines. How do you own a mine in a land in where you're not indigenous? Well, yeah, people say,
and
well, you could purchase the land, but how do you purchase? How can I put this? How do you purchase a birthright that's sold by a person that doesn't have standing legally to sign it over to you or to assign you authority over it?
interesting note at this point, her Indian relation, her um, there's tech coming into this country. There's tech contracts that are going out from this country. They were once with us for the phone, for the internet security, all of these type of jobs. The contracts were once with us, but they were able to um, get cheaper contracts through India. So now, in my observations of Michigan and Tennessee, I see a great influx of Indian people who are taking on these tech jobs and positions, and they're coming from their country to this country. And then a lot of the neighborhoods that were had Indian influence, but it was really Indian and Arab. Now you're seeing a separation of the Indian and the Arabs, and the Indian neighborhoods are now pretty much locking it up, where everybody is Indian all the way down the street. They also have purchased buildings that I've been able to see here, where they'll move people from that country here to work, and they'll house them all in a building together that may have 4, 5, 6 units, and they'll move them over here to this country, and they'll take on those tech jobs, you know. And with her coming in office, I know that she has this, Megan the Stallion and all of these people around her, and she's pouring hot sauce on her chicken, but her cultural identity is not in alignment with that. And I would suggest that, being that she wasn't with us, she was with them, then her priorities are more for them than they are for us.
Can you see this screen share, brother?
Yes, indeed.
So I just
Yes,
want the
indeed.
audience to be able to refer to this. Now, this is a simple Google search, but you can do your own research your own way. I'm not an opponent nor a proponent of the use of Google. It's simply an available tool, and there's a lot of decent information that comes through. Of course, you have to vet it in your own way, and you have to develop your own understanding
You,
of proper research methodology.
you know,
But
they tried to push those behavioral patterns out when they changed it to the media being able to suppress information and not a bunch of media being
yes,
available. We used to have to vet our media all the time. but we had choices out there. Now,
Correct.
when we're vetting our media, we have to literally like find something before they delete it,
Or
or
have
to
or
get a
have a
book.
really, really good memory.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, go ahead.
Like both of us do, thankfully.
Right,
Hopefully it
right.
stays that way for us both. But listen, it can't take away what you already know. They might try to
Yeah.
pull the wool over your eyes with some of these new things, but country was called Barat. The land was called Barat. And here's the funny thing. Even when you deal with the suffix IA, remember back in school they taught you some Latin, right? So that denotes land of, right? IA, suffix, end of the word. Okay. That denotes land of. So, and that's in Latin. So we're dealing with a contextualization that is not of an ancient origin, original status, or of the origin of anything. It's just a modern lingua franca
Mm.
or common use of a word referring
So,
to a place,
so
right?
was this after colonization of some sort? Did the name
Absolutely.
change? Ah, okay,
Absolutely.
okay,
I mean,
okay.
remember, learning about U.S. history, a key thing people need to remember when this election comes up. It seems like ancient history because of how long ago you would think it is. Contextually, though, it's really not that long ago that the Dutch East India Company and the British East India Company imported all sorts of goods and people into this particular land that has been incorporated under the name United States of.
Yeah.
So Bharat was the original name. And you see in 1950 is when they began to refer to them and it as India and Indians. Prior to that, of course, the Niji people, as Brother Dane Calloway and his wife have introduced the terminology to a lot of us that weren't brought up knowing. Injin, no disrespect. I'm not using that pejoratively, especially not towards to people I consider myself a part of. But Injin people,Ingen, often mispronounced Injun, Injun, in a pejorative manner, also known as the Negro, after I want to say, was it 16? Give me 1674 maybe, and then of course again after the 1790 census, U.S.
Oh
census.
yeah,
So
and then they did that with Spain too, because Spain wasn't called
correct.
Spain previous to colonization. It
No,
was 1492,
there were actually
14.
two principalities. One was called Aragon, and the other was called Castile. Right, and the merging of the two together became España,
Mm.
which we call Spain.
So
In
wait, so the slave trade wouldn't then be attributed. If you're going to attribute the slave trade to the Spanish, then it wouldn't be attributed to the indigenous people. It would be attributed to the people who named it or changed its name
correct.
at that colonization period.
Absolutely. It was also called at one point in time Iberia. Um, and then also, what's the other name? It's another name. Give me 1 second. Help me out here if you can think of it. I'm trying to remember. It was the name that the Al Andalus, the Moors called it Al Andalus or
You know what?
Andalus.
And I just
Yeah,
looked at that yesterday. That's
yeah.
crazy. I just looked at that in my readings yesterday because I asked what was the name of Spain previous to its arrival, and some Al Andal that name you just said came up under the bottom, the bottom. So
Mm-hmm.
just read that yesterday.
Yep, Al Andalus. So, but yeah, this it's interesting though how when you look at both sides of the aisle, you see Vivek Ramaswamy, you see Nikki Haley, both in the Conservative Party. You see, of course, Kamala Harris. You see, I'm trying to think, is there another?
Kali Ma.
Yeah, Kalima. Don't get us kicked off here. I brought that up some years ago, and they kept on taking those videos down. But Yeah, I was saying this back in what 2015, 2016. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with that energy of destruction for the purpose of another rebirth. Some people call it a reset. Okay.
Now, woo,
Hmm.
now, mm. So you said so she would be a catalyst to inducing a new way, a reset, or a new way of behaving, thinking, and being.
We could tie and without stretching. I mean, without being ridiculous, utterly preposterous, and egregious, we could draw correlations between the shutdown of CERN near the end of the Trump presidency to the reopening of CERN during a certain time period or season, while the country is being arguably run by the
Now,
first
now,
Indian American or Bharatan American president, who's in the office, though, a vice president, if
it's
you will.
interesting. We talked about them. We talked about lightning. We talked about the different levels of power. That eclipse that happened, man, was
Hmm.
so strange because I grew up knowing that there is a time span, I think like 18 or 19 years between each eclipse. This eclipse was not at all within that time frame.
Correct.
And then there was a partial eclipse, I believe, a year or two previous to that, and
Yes.
then the eclipse happened. But the reason I said it's interesting because if we're looking at power and we look at the sun, then the sun is a major producer of power.
Indeed.
We saw China run a program where they created a fake sun. We also know about the cloud programs that are being ran for whatever reason they're being ran, but they do have the effect of blocking out the sun, cooling the land, creating rain.
Yeah.
Um,
Cloud seeding, which has been
yeah,
around since the 1940s.
cloud seeding. So
Absolutely.
if you were to inhibit the power of the sun from being transferable into the earth or transferred into people, or to limit the amount or intake, then you would use a fake sun, a cloud seeding program, a random eclipse. I mean, not a random. I didn't. I didn't mean that. But you would use something like that to inhibit the power of the sun. This way, you can inhibit the development of metahumans, or you could inhibit the information that may be held within the light of um, a increasing sun. Just a thought.
Abs- Absolutely. Also, you would be able to shield the public's attention or redirect the public's attention while shielding an event like the opening of an interdimensional portal or doorway, wormhole. Uh, with the image of who was referred to as Lord Shiva as a gift from one of the most
Yes.
prominent families of
Mm-hmm.
the same caste
I
or
remember that. I
or
remember that. That was
class,
strange.
that would be connected to some of these individuals whose names have been mentioned. So, these none of these things are coincidental. And if you think about this, the more that information becomes available, the more access we have to information instantly. In order to hide the names or the identities of those who are the guilty, you would have to bring more people that are unfamiliar to the public into the discussion or into the arena of politics. You know,
Yes, because that's what I'm afraid of at this current time, Jay. Now that we're speaking of this, is I'm afraid that the capitalist grips that have got into our political system. I'm feeling like they might sell our estate from us under us before we claim it. And
already done,
mm,
already done in a manner of speaking. I mean, because essentially, if you already piloted programs. I think I'm getting some feedback, maybe
You
from
sound clear on my
your
end.
end.
Oh,
Okay, I'm hearing it in my headphones. Maybe let me see if I can. Maybe it's just
I
my end. No,
I
I'm getting
put the
some.
phone in to hope that I wouldn't get. Okay, hold on,
Let's see. Now I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Am
Now
I
I can
able to
hear
get?
you.
Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
it's gone now. Yeah,
Okay.
perfect. All right.
Okay.
So yeah, they would have to bring new players in. Same relationships, if you get what I'm saying. Same
Mm-hmm.
bloodline, different names. It's just like when Judge Joe Brown recently started to, well, it wasn't just recently, but they've been interviewing him again on certain platforms, which I'm glad, because I may not see eye to eye on some of the topics that I've heard the honorable Judge Joe Brown in the past bring up on everything. But when he speaks
Big
on,
shout out to the House of Brown. I know you. I see you.
indeed, TRY, Euless. All right, so
Mhm.
they he's exposing the actual facts. How do you get the connection between Sitaro and Bush? You look at the business relationship. Now you look at the intermarriage between Sitaro and I don't know I can't remember the maiden name, but the mother of the former president. There's direct bloodline connection, and then there's business relationship, and then there's the agency that was shared between the Bush and Sitaro family. If you don't know what I'm referring to, look into it. Check out some of the interviews recently that Judge Joe Brown has done on YouTube platforms. Shout out to those platforms. I don't know them. We don't have a relationship yet. I would love to connect at some point in the future, if possible. But nonetheless, I check you out, and I enjoy the relaying of the information and your delivery. Um, it's awesome. So keep it up, my brothers and sisters. But yeah, Judge Joe Brown is telling you the connection. Now you can ignore it if you like. You can choose to think this is a bunch of political hit pieces. You can ignore the fact that the former president, prior to Mr. Trump, signed into law the process and the legality of something that has been deemed illegal since 1945, 3 years before the end of World War II, 3 years prior to the invention of a nation called Israel on a modern world, not
Wait,
not a,
you
not
you
on a.
you mean the Israel that we're allied with and we use military forces to fight for?
Absolutely.
So they if but they were in the biblical text. This can't be true, Jay. It can't be. They're
Mm.
in the biblical text, aren't they?
So in the biblical text, this may sound controversial, but that was in the realm of imagination. The actual creation or invention in real time in the modern era of that concept coming into reality was in 1948 through a declaration by the House of Rothschild.
And
Yeah,
they use our military to defend this, Jay.
yeah, absolutely,
Mm, mm.
absolutely. So when you're dealing with corporations and you're dealing
Wait
with
a
this,
minute, wait a minute, wait. I just want to add too. Wait, didn't they give them for what they suffered over there? Didn't they gave them reparations? They paid the people who went through the Holocaust and experienced all of that over there. They gave them reparations. Our
absolutely,
country, the U and excuse me, the U.S. corporation
correct.
gave them reparations. They
That
still
is
haven't given the melanated people within this country reparations, but they did give them reparations. Oh, they pay them annually. They pay them annually.
yeah, because invented or not, they actually have become a nation. Melanated people doesn't represent a nation or a people for that matter. It represents a type of person at law that has no discernible, protectable, or enforceable rights.
So in order to have that, you would have to have a nationality. So when these colonizing
Absolutely.
families came into these different locations around the world, the reason for them naming them after the work that they were doing and marrying into their families. And I remember a case between John Manuel early on in early on in the Americas. He was a European refugee that came here, and then he developed a relationship with the natives, and then he ended up having children and grandchildren within a native family, and he went
Mm.
before the U.S. court to be acknowledged and have the same rights as an indigenous person. Isn't that interesting? That's crazy.
Yeah. At one point in time, being an indigenous person, it was assumed that your rights were intact. So when you would accept another title or label under a corporate banner that would dehumanize or um, remove you from the family of nations amongst the peoples of the earth, you would then fall into another category that would be subhuman and would be secondary in nature as it pertained to rights in exchange for privileges and benefits.
You went exactly where my next question lied. So then, in this people's organization, like when your chiefs and your chieftesses with me, now we have groups that call themselves the Council of Chiefs, that call themselves the Blue Label. They're under the king and queenship of Europe. They're under that whole family line over there.
Correct.
So for the sake of those rights and privileges, they could very well be giving up the rights to their estate
In order to
in
be
the sense
a
that
citizen, exchange exchange for citizenship. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, and then this would also go on. That would be voluntarily, but the involuntary version of that would be the taking of your birthright through the Social Security contract.
Oh no, it's given up by someone with more authority at your birth than you at the moment.
So your parents.
I mean, well, parent would be a legal term, but yeah, your father or mother or both.
Okay. Okay, so that would then leave your estate in the hands of the U.S. corporation under its care.
Correct. It would be an
So
unclaimed estate.
it would be an unclaimed estate.
Mhm.
So if they made a bad decision and decided to give your estate away to foreign interests, there's little to nothing you can do unless it was by force at that point that they gave it away, right? You couldn't claim it at the point that they made a foolish enough decision to give it away to foreign interests.
You would have to redeem your identity uh, back on a basis of awareness.
Okay. Okay.
You know,
Okay.
it's just like a child that seeks to be emancipated before the legal age of adulthood is determined in their territory or state. In some instances, it's essentially a moot point because some states, for example, a child has to be 18 years old before they could be emancipated. At that point, they're old enough to enter the armed forces, old enough to purchase tobacco, old enough to
Hmm.
travel outside of the country of their own free will alone, you know, get married, those type of things.
Hmm.
So at that point, it's a moot point when it comes to certain things. However, declaring themselves of the legal age of majority would remove them out of that pool of minorities that would be wards of the state, uh, considered property of the public entity known as municipalities,
No, no,
states,
no,
and
no,
territories.
no, no. Jay, doesn't minority just mean that the black people aren't
Right,
just black people?
right. That would
Minority.
Well, black would be one of the subsidiaries of the term minor. It would be included in the group of minors or minority people because they have never declared themselves a nation. They're outside of any
Oh,
particular.
so they mean minor at law when they say minority. They
Absolutely.
mean minor law.
A person who is incapable and incompetent to represent themselves or present themselves in a business manner.
So this is why they would give you a lawyer for legal representation so that they could have your authority.
In order to gain authority over you, they would be able to represent you, which is a form of fraud.
Oh, and wait, if the judges are European descent, then they would also be foreigners. So that would be again your estate and power going into foreign.
An acquiescence to a foreign agent. Yes.
Mm, mm. This further makes me a little bit nervous about the ignorant decisions of capitalist motivations of our governing body. Because
sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, where is it? Just because if they're holding our estate and we haven't claimed our estate because we do not have the knowledge to go claim our estate, I do not want to get there to the estate, and because we did not exercise our authority, we find Walmart on our great grandmother's land, you know what I mean? Or we find, some other family owned corporation on our land. And then BlackRock. This brings me to BlackRock. So, we had a conversation about Gaddafi's plan.
Indeed.
Leave that there, pin in that. Okay.
Okay, gotcha.
So BlackRock has bought up a predominant portion of the land, all of the single family homes, I think it was. They are the largest.
At least 60% of them.
At least 60% of them. And then Bitcoin is going to be connected to land.
Yeah. Right now they're calling it virtual real estate.
Right. That's the pre-program. I mean the desensitized. I mean, wait. The
transitional terminology.
Yes, there we go. Okay, there we go. Right. Okay, so they're connecting that to land, and then we talked about the estate being put into the care of someone else. So if these individuals decide to sell to BlackRock because they get a good offer, then all of the land that's foreclosed on, all of the land that's been taken for taxes, all of the land that it then becomes up for grabs. I mean, not up for grabs, but for sale by the state. The individuals who have land. What do you call it? Land banks. The land banks for the state.
Right.
Then if we're found in acquiescence and we never claim our estate, then the right goes over to them, and then they're able to sell to a BlackRock.
Well, let's take it a little bit further without going too far down the rabbit hole today. But let's just say this. Even if one went to transition from acquiescence to the cancellation or rescission level of said unauthorized agreements.
Unbeknownst contracts.
You're still going to have to deal with eminent domain being a public policy. See, what all of this goes headlong into is public versus private. Even when you're dealing with the political parties, you're dealing with a party that is wanting to push the enlargement of the borders of government for the purpose of pushing more public policy on the people, and another that represents the private sector and the private interest of individualized citizen subjects that have claimed a form of their own individual rights and sovereignty over those rights, not necessarily over land, but over their right to purchase things, to pursue after things, to have control through foundations, trusts, corporations.
So you're saying that they don't have the right to, if we made it plain, you're saying they never had the right to sell it in the first place. So no matter how much.
First place. So all of the foreign actors, which is what they are, know that the jig is up.
Wait,
But
foreign actors, which were the foreign interests of the court that we sign our
yeah,
rights
yeah,
over to.
yeah.
Okay.
And everything from then on, from putting your kids in school to your driver's license, are forms of adhesion contracts.
Yeah, so they
They're
could teach a lie in school that said Christopher Columbus discovered America, and even after knowing that that's not true, they could still teach that as long as the parents send their children to that. They can continue that curriculum as long as the parent agree for the student to
Let me take
to
you
go.
a little further with a little further inside the insight of that. He did discover America under a church doctrine. See, the doctrine of discovery declared that any explorer or person who was insured and funded by the church, upon their landing in a certain place and them coming in contact with the resources and the landscape, as well as the inhabitants of that land, whether indigenous, native, or migratory prior to them, that if they were of certain description, swarthy, Sabaean, if they met the description of an original person, that they were automatically subject to the crown or the papal seat of authority that had assigned them on that mission. So, under the doctrine of discovery, Christopher Columbus did discover part of the Americas. It was Hispaniola, which we now call Haiti, La República Dominicana, and Cuba, right? So now, ironically, the people of that place made connections with countries like Iran, North Korea, China, Russia. They made alliances while still being positioned in a very prime location to where they are able to cause devastation should they have certain armament under the protection of those other nations. So in that instance, their allegiance with these other
My
larger
friend Sam is
my enemy's
yeah,
enemy is my
he's
friend,
yeah.
right? So we've been taught this good versus evil narrative when in fact, it's been the corporation that has absorbed us that is the bad guy, so to speak. But if you speak in that manner, then they will come at you with all kinds of labels. You are anti-American. You are
But wait, constitutionally, it is our right. It is our right when the government has become tyrannical to its people. It is the right of the people to then remove them from office and restructure the governing
Ah,
body.
now, if that were true, then how are all these people locked up for what happened on January 6th? I mean, if they're not a party to that document, meaning if their names aren't affixed, if there is no adhesion contract that is discernible, or what do they call, shows created joinder between their physical person in this incarnation, or some connectivity to their ancestors, uh, being signers and or framers of a document that was already written by indigenous people. um, I mean, how do you defend yourself if you fail in the overthrow of that tyrannical government? And then
Oh,
how do you explain to people after your failed attempt to exit to what's the word, execute what was your right under this agreement that you found out later you had no joinder to? How do you then explain to people that the real opposition that was seeking to perform a coup would eventually do this in broad daylight at a rally where civilians would be injured and killed at the behest of them trying to assassinate the person who they said gave you the clarion call to do what was your civic duty under that agreement? I'll just let that sit there for a moment for those who come across this later on. But I believe you caught what I'm not saying, right? So now what? Broad daylight, little boy. You said that brains ain't formed till 25 now. You want us to believe in your version of mind science and all your new discoveries that would justify truancy laws and, holding parents accountable for kids' decisions that you say are kids but are old enough to buy cigarettes and alcohol now, or go and kill multiple people in warfare as long as they're wearing the right uniform and following orders. So, I mean, I just want to understand, like, what now? What now? You see, you didn't believe the narrative was what it was January 6th. You didn't believe that narrative. You turned it into something else, and everybody that did that was criminal, and they were following the directions and influence of, an insane wannabe dictator.
Wait, would that be because the media portrayed them that way?
Oh, yeah. And it was completely legal now because the 44th president said that it was.
Yes, the fourth. So wait. So Obama made it so that they can suppress and certain things in the media, and they could put certain things out depending on the national security parameters of the matter.
Fact checkers.
So now
does not meet our community guidelines. It is in violation of our community guidelines. Community, doesn't that come from common unity?
Yeah, unity, common unity. So what is isn't when you play something over and over again to people, isn't that programming?
Yeah, that is a way of repetitious programming. I mean, after all, that is a way of causing one to learn a lesson. Is repetition is the mother of learning, and necessity is the father of invention. So if you create the need for a form of censorship, then of course you could repeatedly educate the public on what they shouldn't say in a country where free speech is one of its biggest selling points. And you could turn strong patriotic folks into cowards who are afraid to speak their minds because God forbid they get canceled.
Wait. And then people who are developing these types of understandings and are challenging these ways of thinking that are being administered. Did you know the CIA is responsible for MK Ultra programs? But whoever is responsible for that, you know what I mean? Whoever is responsible for that type of activity and that type of programming.
Some of the very first and still most influential films are produced by the Pentagon. Just check out the list. This is an interesting list. Candace Owens had Charlemagne the God on the Breakfast Club look this up, and he had to concede that, wow, she knew what she was talking about. Now, I'm not going to promote or condemn Candace Owens. I believe in free speech. So even if I think some of the things that she says are a little misguided or just way off base, and there are a lot of things that she's been pointing out recently that made me a little afraid for her when she comes back to this side of the pond, as they say, over where her husband's from, UK, And, hey, to each their own. But she's been going in lately, exposing the infiltration of certain groups, spiritual factions. I won't even call them religion, that have infiltrated the religious orders of the three-headed dog, as some of my friends and I like to
I just gotta say it. This was Gaddafi's plan to do first. He had the connection to the lawyers. He had the connection to the top artists, which most of them allegedly lost their lives in this process. Johnny Cochran was going for reparations. Michael Jackson, Prince, Bob Marley. I just, the list could continue. But anyway, the infiltration of those different arenas of spirituality, music, and all of the methods by which they utilize this programming scheme to make you hear it, to make you see it, to make you feel it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
There was a point at which someone, rest in power, Gaddafi, was going to connect to all of them and allow them to utilize this to expose a group of people that he was in direct conflict with, and just to everything is okay till you start dealing with the bankers. MLK was safe until he started talking about banking.
So was
Kennedy
JFK.
was safe.
So was JFK. Yeah.
Yep.
So was JFK. Until he started talking about restoring the estates to the original holders of the birthright and establishing or reestablishing a centralized bank, going away from a reserve that really isn't so federal at all, only by name and title, not by definition at law. Has nothing.
They are a private owned company that
Yes,
charges interest on every dollar.
they're telling
Every
you.
dollar.
They're telling you exactly what shadow controls the government, the mind controllers. They're telling you who's actually dictating the policy. They're telling you who actually is funding all of the programs and projects from education to the military industrial complex.
Prison
I
to
mean,
school. School to prison.
they haven't hidden a doggone thing. They have put it right on display and then told you you're not seeing what you're seeing. Hey, I know that warm, wet sensation you're feeling. It smells and feels an awful like when your child urinated on you when you were changing their diaper, but that's not pee, that's rain. It's a very warm, refreshing rain, and you should be glad that it's falling on you right now.
Yeah,
That's
that's
what it
that. So if there was something to be said for today's video for the central ideology for me to convey to people is we gotta get the estate before we lose it. However you acquire it, there are squatters' rights. There are places you can go and find foreclosed properties. There are land banks that you can petition for land.
I want to say this on that, if I could, because you're familiar with this. And I'm going to say this strongly. The only way to get the R word, the only way to regain the estate.
Got it. Johnny Cochran was fighting for it.
Correct. And there's others who have some great input. I would say even Umar Johnson, he has some great things to say about the topic.
Where that school at, Umar? Where that school at?
Tariq Nasheed, big ups, foundational Black American. I don't agree with the use of the term Black within that, but I know what you mean, and I don't view myself as separate from you, my brother. I respect you a great deal and what you've accomplished. I don't have to agree with everything that you say in the way that you say it, but I'm not against you. I will say that publicly. But there's only one man who's laid out the process for gaining that. And you have to go the way that he said it because he was a part of the think tank that wrote the bill and the legislative policy on that. And that is Dr. Claude Anderson. If you do not revisit what Dr. Claude Anderson said in 1999 at the Congressional Black Caucus, if you don't listen to what he said about tying your connection the same way that the Native Americans not only did, but finding your connection as the former Negro, current Black man in America or woman in America, or Aboriginal or foundational Black, however you want to refer to yourself, to each their own. Like I said, I don't view myself as separate, above, or beneath you. We're together in this as far as how we're treated, what we face, what we've seen, and what levels we still need to grow to. Okay. Let me just put that in there. However, if you do not go back and revisit what he said, I mean, this was the man who stood eye to eye, toe to toe with the Bull Connors and the George
I,
Wallaces,
I mean,
and the Klansmen that also wore a tie and sat in public meetings and on television, and they couldn't argue. Yeah, if they go about it this way, yeah, man, we gonna this. Yeah, this is the way it's got to be worded, though. If they can't comprehend this, they fuck. But if they can get it, all right, cool. And he sat up there and told you what is your connection, what he really was saying to the American Indian. But
you
not
know,
not to mince words.
I want to make a point of being able to say to my children, adding on to where and building right where you are. I want to be able to say to my children who they mama, great grandmama, great great grandmother, and
Mm-hmm.
great grandmother. I want to be able to say it, and I want them to be able to say it with ease and in their remembrance. Because ultimately the system goes back to the mothers. When we were aboriginal, indigenous in our operations, they are who has the land and who would still hold the land. So you being able to tie yourself back through mamas and grandmothers and great grandmothers, not that the fathers, grandfathers, or great grandfathers are of any less importance. Know their names, say their names too. But just make sure everybody has that trace back, because you don't want to get yourself lost in the names that they gave you. You don't want to get lost in that, because I could consider myself Manuel and leave it there. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? But I would never know Emmanuel. You know what I mean? And I would never know Russia. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Aboriginal Russia. You know what I mean?
yeah,
If I didn't know the grandmother way back.
yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, and so there's a connection with that as well. Maybe we can go into that at another time, but there's a reason why information coming out of that place to people here, awakening them to who they really are, what the sleeping giant in them is now being awakened to on a large scale. Um, the interest that they would have in that is not just the destabilization of the corporation, but the timing of all things that need to come into fruition in order for the entire world to move forward. Okay. Um,
I,
so while it's looked at and tried to be painted to us as, oh, this is propaganda, why would you believe them? This is coming from them. And it was people on, on platforms on YouTube that have Egyptian titles in there and shrines that they supposedly are priests and things over. And they tried to come at specific other YouTubers that were sound in their informational research and presentation of the research and the data, and they would not debate them because it would be exposed that they were Negropeans that were being paid to disseminate partial truths to make it look like propaganda was not being pushed from the mainstream, and that we were falling victim to propaganda that was somehow being leaked through some threat, some external threat. Like we're not already being occupied by foreign agents and agencies.
no, man.
Like we're not already being deceived to believe that private corporations are government entities,
Come on, man.
and that them working in conjunction and hand in hand is completely normal, lawful, and legal. Oh, there's hell to pay, but will we cash in? There's hell to pay, but will we cash in? There's
So
hell
yeah, that
there's hell to pay. I'm gonna keep saying it, but will we cash in? See, that's the fear. Oh, there was a fear of a black planet. if they're afraid of the inevitable, what other kind of planet has there ever really been? Even when you're using constructs like color and race,
And I was about to say that
you're
sun
dealing with
exposure.
a spectrum of light.
You're sun exposure. You're dealing with sun exposure. Ain't no such thing as no different races. You
But-
put a
Yeah,
anyway.
but you're dealing with a spectrum of light.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Either black or white light spectrum.
And
You're not dealing with the pejorative meaning or the physical literality of a hue in a separation of hue. You're dealing with divisions, even though you want, well, that's the same thing. No, you're dealing with divisions. Like if you have a conference in football and you have this division and that division, they're always
now you getting back into the ancient memories, Jay. Now you talking about ancient memories. You talking about when we were separated into things that corresponded to each other, like as if you had a born under a certain time period, or your behavioral patterns exhibit this type of group. Then you go to that type of group and you develop with them, and that expertise comes out for all of humanity to a higher plateau of understanding.
Absolutely. And so we're watching them play political chess in 4 and 5D. Some of us are even being used as pawns, or knights or rooks. I mean, we love titles. So at least I'm not a pawn. I've done graduated. What you called now? I'm bishop. All right, overseer. All right, gatekeeper. Okay.
But and then you know what? And then I'll even give them the benefit of the doubt and say that there may be some genetic resonance with those positions and titles being held by
I don't mean that all in a negative sense. Right. Good point.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just saying, okay, so now what? You're bishop now. All right. So what does that do for us? I mean, if there's no one to oversee, ultimately there's no need for an overseer. There's no need for a vizier or a bishop. I mean, but let's not forget when you taught us about Yuya. You call him Joseph, but Yuya was his real name. When you taught us about Yuya, he was vizier of Upper and Lower Egypt. So his master was the king, or Nusut Bati. So who sat within the pharaoh or the great house. So he was the servant of the great house. Now, without the people to serve, what good would his position or title be? Right? And without the experiences with Potiphar's wife accusing him, like we're seeing so many. We're seeing so many Josephs right now. You all better wake up. Oh, they were corrupted. They did okay, but who introduced that to them? Obviously, most of them wouldn't be doing these things. They would never be named amongst actions that these people would take if they hadn't learned from the good old boys. So now it's their turn up at bat. Why would they not swing? What are you talking about? Of course, they're. What did you think they was going to do? They was going to do better than the one before them? No. Because you wasn't supposed to be involved in that wheelhouse in the first place. You have a foreign agency, a foreign group of foreign actors that were hired to do business. What is wrong with you?
Wait, I can coach a football team though and make up for it, right? No, wait. I can start a soup kitchen, right? And that'll make up for it, right?
No.
Oh.
No.
What if I make some millionaires with some contracts? They bring them into the music industry real strong. Will that make up for it?
Not at all. No,
but I made some millionaires, man.
The soup kitchen was made for the poor huddled masses yearning to be free. What you doing in the soup kitchen? Oh, because your community isn't looking out for you.
And hip hop was made to free the minds of people through knowledge.
What?
So what you doing with them contracts?
I thought that was rock and roll.
No, that was hip hop.
Oh, wait a minute. No, I thought that was gospel.
No, that was hip hop. That was hip hop.
Wait. Didn't the same thing that's now happening with hip hop, didn't it already happen to rock and roll? And didn't it
Yes, it
already
did.
happen to gospel?
Yes, it did.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought I was tripping.
Mm.
No.
Mm.
So at the end of the day, does it really matter what genre or way of presentation or style of delivery? No, that's never the case. It's just the fact that it's influential, it's trendy, and we set those things. So why
What
is
are
it
you
that
doing?
we turn it over so easily? Oh, because that's the pattern that we've fallen into, like birthrights. You know, I mean, like
Or because
like
they're so enthralled by a mansion that they don't, that 48 acres of unfinished land means nothing to them, when the reality of the situation is a house, many mansions can be put on 48 acres,
indeed.
and the wood to build the acres come from land, and most all of the materials come from the land. So if you, so this is a lazy, that might be a lazy thing too. So you got to get out of the lazy being handed to you by your enemy and then serving them when you own even what they're handing you. Just a thought.
I
Just a
mean,
thought.
if a man built a house on your land without permission and you were away on vacation, essentially when you came back to see your land or to oversee your land, and you've come to find this structure, this fabulous structure, in fact, beautiful, amazing, illustrious uh, structure on your land, um, you would be able to what? Give them the alternative, the choice, the decision to either go on and
Pay.
turn the land, turn the house over to you since it's on your estate, or pay you rent,
Mm-hmm.
or you could say, no, I don't want any of that. What I need you to do is go out there with some sledgehammers and some backhoes and some cranes and some wrecking balls or some dynamite, and I need you to go on and tear it down.
Just like they did without remorse, because just like they did to your great, 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 great grandmother, who I'm trying to remind you of her.
Right.
BlackRock is on top of your great, great, great grandmother. Will you get it off of her? Will you get BlackRock off of her?
Now remember, when you're dealing with that type of idea, you're dealing with a private entity, private entity that has done business with an agency that has connections to the public domain of government. So make sure you understand that these wars these days are oftentimes not fought by public employees or members of the armed forces. You're talking about paramilitary and mercenary armies of paid soldiers, contracted. Uh,
Peacekeeper. I mean, oh no, sorry, excuse me.
no. I mean, like, this guy has all sorts of certifications, put it this way, and may have happened to have some military background, but above all else, he has security clearance to access and go in and out of areas that the average person can and does not, and access to weapons.
For some reason, you reminded me of Kanye West's trainer, and you reminded me of
Mm. Pasternak,
oh,
yeah, Harley
mhm.
Pasternak, yeah.
You just
People,
reminded me.
people like that, very dangerous individuals, and very, very not only skilled but very well trained and wealthy. connections to seemingly endless resources on a certain level.
Well, we won't go down that rabbit hole, but Kanye's descendants have right to his lineages. Yeah, we'll leave that one alone. So just make sure that you don't let them take our estate before we reclaim it, or trick us out of our estate, or fear us out of our estate.
Well,
False evidence appearing real.
I'm sure you've heard Alex Jones not too long ago state that they would rather destroy the estate before turning it back over.
And
at least on the surface, right? So let's not forget, people, that even when we're looking at island chains, those island chains sit on top of land that is rooted further down into the water and connected to other land that is beneath what we would think is the ocean floor.
And you got to be a fool to think that our government is advanced as they are, having explored them caves and can't tell you what's down there. It's still only speculative theory what's down there because we can't traverse that. You got to be silly, man, to think that. You really got to be silly. You got to be silly. I just to give you some idea of what I'm saying here. I read the book of Tahuti. And in the book of Tahuti, he talks about up under the paw of the Sphinx is a library of information that I've stored in the case that an invasion comes from outer space. I left information up under the paw that'll tell you how to turn on a ship. And you turn on the ship, and when you turn on the ship will rise up, and it'll put a grid out, and that will keep you safe from outside invaders. And then, lo and behold, the governing body, which was one of these takeover family situations, then all of a sudden decide that they want to go dig up under the paw of the Sphinx for no apparent reason. They discovered it.
Oh yeah.
And then they so instead of making that public information or telling us that we may be facing an invasion or anything like that, if it was so, you know what I mean? They'll just keep that information for themselves and take all of the stuff out, even if they don't know how to work it, even if they don't have any understanding, even if they don't have the consciousness or the bloodline to utilize what it is to protect us and keep us safe. Instead of giving it to us and telling us it's ours, they'll put it in a museum and let it sit there and rot while we face imminent danger. So,
Well, let me just say this. I mean, there's only one leader within the last 10 years within the free world that wanted to start a space force. During a time where NASA, ironically, was deactivated, at least as far as public knowledge and information that was being disseminated. The interesting thing I find is that prior to that period of time in which that individual leader decided to publicize his desire to start said Space Force, that there were communications received by way of communications devices through NASA stating that Inky's return was imminent and that they were on their way. And this would be right directly in alignment with the timing of which I saw this orange ball in the evening time and shared with my fiance at the time that I knew what that was. She said, "Oh, wow, is there
you talking about those documented double suns?"
Well, no. Let me finish on this. That's the second sun at night. Like, is that the sun? No, it's much larger than the sun would even present itself in the night sky. And I said, yeah, I know exactly what that is. She said, well, what is it? What do you think it is? I said, I know what it is. I know it's Nibiru. Okay. Or Nibiru, as some people pronounce it. Or if you want to go back, ancient Nebheru. Okay.
You could even call it the golden child. That's what Tahuti references it to. He says that's where the gods live. Now, the gods, like the S, gods
Right.
live.
So ironically, I went to Google, and before I could even type in a Google search, it was right in the carousel of news stories. And for the last, 3,600 years since this last appeared, this new appearance of this age is present now in the night sky. Nibiru has returned. It's a story on Google News, and I just held it up for her, and she just like, wow. And I'm like, it's not that I'm saying it like it's connected to my gnosis or that I'm just so um, attuned to these particular events and occurrences, even though a lot of us, including myself, have been. Um, I instantly knew what I was seeing. I knew exactly what I was seeing, and I've tried to say since I became how can I put this, inexplicably um knowledgeable. Besides just
Mm.
the study, besides just the reading of information, but experiences in meditation and communications, it became abundantly clear that the process of what a lot of people have been taught through their religions and their spiritual systems as a return for one particular purpose is so limited in the grand scheme of things. Their understanding that's been disseminated to them or
The-
divulged to them.
these
So
idiots will rather stay in the third dimension than to ascend into the fourth or fifth because they're not sure if they're in control over there.
some of them don't really have much choice. Some of them have made decisions that have rooted them in those planes of reality, unfortunately, to where unless they separate from the body, they they couldn't they couldn't transition by way of frequency or vibration anyway. Um, they'd be split in their existence. They'd be split between planes of existence. I don't know how to really.
I can definitely see because the programming would remain that would cause them to recreate the previous vibratory field, so they would just keep recreating it because they wouldn't have formulated or built higher facilities or higher faculties to keep them in that awareness or off of that programming
It
or
would
to choose it.
it would be like if we were able to stop AI's progress of learning. Like if somehow we could send AI into a state of circular reasoning and they couldn't break free from that pattern, uh, they would be stuck at a certain point of evolved uh, logical consciousness within the realm of reason. Their reason would just be in a loop. There are people that are in that stage or
Oh,
state.
but by the way, BlackRock just bought that DNA website. Oh goodness, I can't think of the DNA web, but it's a huge ancestry.com. BlackRock purchased
Oh, so they
ancestry.com.
bought it. They bought it from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yes, they did. So now they have the genetic information, and now Bitcoin is going to be tied to the land after they have the genetic information. Some in some ancient technologies, if you didn't have the genetic information, you couldn't enter certain temples. You couldn't enter certain locations without the genetic information being available to you. So I don't know what BlackRock's found interest, why they found interest in the genetic information held by the ancestry.com, but they paid a pretty penny for that.
Let's just keep it simple. So genetic information, data. We've talked
Hmm.
about this, right? Data mining, data farming. That is where what the blockchain operates off of. So when we talk about digital currencies of any sort, whether it be Bitcoin, whether it be Dogecoin, whatever it is, it operates off of data within a blockchain.
Jay, the when Gaddafi was going to accumulate the gold and take and charge oil for the gold and put all of the currency on one island, the end of the operation was for him to evenly distribute the wealth amongst the indigenous peoples of all of these different race types and everything like that. So because of their different genetic genetic areas of expertise, because of what they had developed over time, so he was going to then evenly distribute the wealth with the genetics. So this is another potential implementation of his plan, except the difference would be that when they got the genetic coding or the genetic information and they wanted to tie it to those different land masses or disperse wealth in accordance with it, they would just put themselves at the head as the business owner or the or the overhead company for that landmass and everything, so that when they made these discoveries or came back into these genetic resonances and operated in them, then they would already have the land right, the information right, and the genetic information corresponding to whatever discoveries were made from that genetic information on those specific land places. And if you wanted to tie a genetic person to the land of their family or the land of their lineage, now you know the land of their lineage, so you can find the future generation and bring them to the land to unlock any genetic information or resonances that were held there.
So what I heard you just say was that they went on ahead and thought of the future of slavery and how that they could justify it without much struggle, without even needing to use military grade force, by purchasing the patent or the trademark or whatever you would call it business wise over the genetic data of any group of people, so that they could now trade those bloodlines or information to medical companies, to science companies or scientific agencies, in order to be able to manipulate and develop whatever form of genetic manipulation and experimentation they desire, without having to gain specific individual permissions.
Yes.
And therefore, without you even remembering or answering to anyone or knowing for a fact that you are enslaved, it's guaranteed that from here on out, let's just say arguably, and this is theoretic, that all humans would be born into slavery again.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was with no cloning center added. That was with no cloning center even added into that equation.
Right. I mean, well, eventually, even if there was a cloning center next door, most people would not even remember that that's what's there, because that's how they would have it to be. I mean, you're sending out all kinds of alerts. Like, just imagine, just like you do a multi-factor authentication process over an app, if there's an app where you could just delete this person's one day of their memory.
You know what? We should get into that at our next show, because they have mapped out the frequencies that correspond to mental bandwidth
Capacity. Yes.
So
indeed, we hope that you've enjoyed this today. Check out the website www.blacksunshaman. Check out the products. Get your detoxification on. Get your purification on. Get your deworming, your antifungal, antiviral, your anti-parasite products, your vitamin supplements, your health and nutrition, vitalization, anything you could think of. Check it out. If you don't see it,
And they got them, and on the website too is those EMF protectors. So all of this frequency warfare that's going on, if you want an opportunity to have a clear mind, a clear space, then you can utilize those Faradays to do that, to create a cage.
Absolutely. Shout out to 3PMD. Shout out to the Schwebel Room. You can check us out on, you can show your love and check us out on youtube.com/JDrizzy3692. All of our episodes are uploaded there and at Schwebel Room, at Schwebel Room. YouTube.com Schwebel Room, / at Schwebel Room. So yeah, thank you for joining us again. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and stick with us, roll with us. You know what I'm saying? It may be some things in the future that you really want to be a part of as time progresses.
Stick and stay and don't go away. This has been a super satiating Sunday conversation with my man. You know what I'm saying? This is the Beyond the Veil podcast, an unusual podcast, and we like it that way. Hopefully you do too. We'll check you out. Hopefully you'll see us next week with a new episode. Stay tuned.
Indeed.
Like, share, subscribe. Peace.